Okay, it's 7 o'clock in the evening in Finland, so I think it's time we start. And it's something entirely else in wherever you're watching this one. But it's great to have you all listening over there. I hope we have a fruitful session about remote learning and about best practices for remote math teaching. Before we start, some practical things. Last time we had this seminar, we had some minor network difficulties time to time. So if it happens again, if I drop out, then just wait patiently. Usually it doesn't take that long to fix the connection, but that's perfectly possible. Also, if you haven't joined the WhatsApp group for questions and support, please do it before we start. I mean now, because we're going to start right away. There's the address on screen, and whatever questions you have about the presentation or around the presentation, or if you want to know more about some of the things I'm saying here, just send questions to WhatsApp. There are our lovely people there who will answer you as soon as possible. And also, if you're interested in trying out some of the practices we're going to discuss today, you can use the other link, which gives you access to Eduten Playground, which is a system we're going to use as a demo in the second half of this presentation. So I'm first going to talk about, in general, about best practices, and then I'm going to show how you can utilize some of those or some of those best practices yourself. So you can also enroll into Eduten Playground. If you do the sign up, you will get the recording for this event sent to you. And even if you don't, you can access this seminar later in our YouTube channel. So glad to have you all on board, and I think it's time we actually start this presentation. In a second, sorry, this is one of the technical difficulties I was talking about. Anyway, I'm in Finland, and it's I think it's a good idea to start with saying greetings from Finland. There are some, I think, somewhat stereotypical images you probably imagine when you think about Finland. We're a tiny country there next to Russia in Northern Europe. It's actually, the summer is actually starting in Finland, so there isn't any snow or ice anymore. There are some leaves on trees, and it's getting really nice. The image in the middle, down in the middle, is from our hometown, Turku. That's where I am at the moment giving you this presentation. And of course, there's Santa Claus, because as all Finnish people know, Santa Claus is actually from Finland, not from North Pole. So let's get that thing straightened out right away. I'm hosting this presentation. My name is Kaila. I'm the head of research in Eduten. I also hold a position in University of Helsinki. I teach programming and study digital learning and learning analytics and digital pedagogy, all things related to digital pedagogy. Usually we give this presentation with my co-host Eikka Kurvinen, who's the head of pedagogy in Eduten. Einari, or Eikka, isn't here today, but there's a really good reason. Eikka and his wife just got their first baby like less than 2 weeks ago, so he's busy doing something else, and I'm going to be hosting this session for you. So I'm sure you all join me to say good luck to Eikka and his wife for new member of the family. And once more, I show you the slide and see that there are a lot of people joining all the time. Just take a quick screen cap or I don't know, use your camera to take a picture and join the WhatsApp group. You can ask whatever questions you want about the presentation or anything around the presentation, whatever you want to know more about. Just drop in a question into WhatsApp. There are people there who are waiting to answer your questions. Okay, but let's get to actual topic of today, which is the transformation to remote learning. And I think this has been a really sort of big topic in the last 8 weeks, if I'm right. Days go so fast now, so it's sort of difficult to say. But anyway, we all faced in education, almost all people faced a whole new situation 8 or 9 weeks ago, because we needed to do a really quick transformation to remote learning. And I think in general, if we compare countries, we did it quite well in Finland. And I think one of the things I'm going to talk about today is how we did the transformation and what kind of things are important when you're doing the transformation to remote learning, whether it's because of the COVID virus or whether after the virus, when things get back to normal, what kind of benefits you can still get from remote learning. But I think one of the things which was sort of essential in Finland when doing the transformation was something we call SISU. And it's a bit difficult to translate, but in general, it means something like something that enables extraordinary action to overcome mentally or physically challenging situation, or a fire that burns through anything, or something like that. What it means is that Finnish people, when they start something, they want to complete that as well. It's a really difficult thing for Finnish people to encounter a problem we can't solve. And I think that was the mentality when we started to really quick transformation to remote learning. Most of the teachers in Finland, most of the students in Finland had no previous experience of remote learning. There were a lot of things people needed to learn, and really quickly, because you couldn't wait for a week or two or anything like that. We needed to keep the schools going on, and we couldn't have the people in the same location. So there was something we needed to do real quickly. And I think that was sort of like a mentality needed. It was something that needed to happen, and then we made it happen. And we made it happen quite successfully. And today I want to talk about some of the things you need to consider when you're doing the transformation yourself. Actually, that image before we move on is from the wife carrying championships. So that's a Finnish sport as well. Okay, if we talk about in a nutshell how the remote learning works, and let's not get into details yet. Let's not think about the actual like applications or systems or tools or anything like that, and not in the topics, but what is like the basic structure of remote learning. And this excellent slide by Mr. Harpa sort of defines it in 4 steps. So there needs to be some kind of instruction or introduction where the teacher presents the current topic and sets the goals. And this is something each day should start. So there should be at least one of these sessions each day, or these instruction sessions, maybe even more, depending on what you're doing. But that's like the start, setting up clear goals. Then there need to be some kind of exercises, something that activate the students, something that students can work on their own or in small groups, in pairs, however you want to do it. But something to keep them actively learning, which is of course essential in all education, but which is specifically essential when you're doing remote learning. But the exercises alone are not enough. There needs to be feedback and guidance, something that tells the students whether they got what they were doing right or wrong, and how they could improve their performance, what they could do better, and especially what things they did really well. Like the positive feedback is really important. Again, this is something that happens all the time in the classroom. You all know that teachers give a lot of feedback in the classroom. That's like a normal setup. But it's something we can't forget when we're working remotely, and it's easy to forget. So it doesn't work if you just give the students a bunch of exercises to complete, and then that's all. Then you wait for the next day or next week and see if the exercises were completed or not. You need to give constant feedback and constant guidance. See if the students are having problems, help them with their problems. Those are all really important things. Then the final phase, which is again maybe sort of a difficult one in remote learning, the number 4, the application. And again, it's an important one because you're learning skills so that you can actually apply them to something useful and something real. So you're not just learning things because the teacher says that you need to learn them, but you need to have some kind of justification why to learn those things, why it's important to know this thing in mathematics, how can you use this in whatever you're going to do in future. And I think it's important to realize that there can't be shortcuts from phase 1 to phase 4. So you can't just give the instruction or introduction or a video lecture or anything like that and then assume that the students can immediately apply the knowledge somewhere. They need to be able to exercise it, to practice it, and then get feedback, and then we can maybe, hopefully, reach the learning goals we are aiming for. So let's think about some things which are sort of important, which are sort of crucial in remote teaching. And these are things we've been talking with Finnish teachers a lot during this remote teaching period. And these are sort of things a lot of the teachers agree, or most of the teachers agree, that are important over there. So the first one is setting clear goals. And again, this is definitely even more important in remote teaching than it is in school, because it's sort of typical that you have a lot less time with your students. You won't be able to be there all the time to tell them what to do, how to do it. So it's important that you sort of justify what you're learning and set clear goals. These are the things you need to complete during this day or during these 2 hours or during this week, whatever the time period is. And the important thing to realize is that different students may need different goals. Again, something I learned when I talked with a friend of mine who's a teacher, an elementary school teacher, and what he said, that when the whole remote thing started, he quickly realized that if he has a preset goal and the same goal for every student, and he gives those goals, sort of announces those goals in the beginning of school day, then some of the students return or submit their work like in 30 minutes or an hour, and some of the students won't be able to complete their work during the whole day, or maybe even 2 days or something like that. And you all realize that might be really bad thing for motivation. If you're working on something too easy or something too difficult, that's not motivating. That's not something that keeps you on going and keeps you on practicing that thing over and over again. So differentiation is important. If someone is good in some topic, set more difficult goals, more challenging goals for them. And if someone is probably not as good, then they probably need less challenging goals to keep the things motivating. So number one, and number two is the gamification. And there's been a lot of talk about gamification in all education. I don't know if you're actually encountered it yourself, but gamification is an important tool in any education. And why it's so important? It's about those goals. So if you set goals, it's important that you also set some kind of way to find out whether you have reached the goal or not. And even better, if you can somehow visualize how close you are to the goal you're trying to reach. So whether you completed like 50% of the task or 75% or 1/3 or something like that, but something where the students can see that they're actually progressing, that they doing something with something meaningful, and they getting towards the goal the teacher has set. So again, this is really important. And the tools we use in gamification to engage students are typically something like trophies, progress bars, or whatever kind of measures we can use to display the progress to students, some kind of virtual awards, anything like that, whatever we can use to keep the students more engaged in the task they're doing, because that's what the trophies do. Even the virtual trophies and virtual progress bars do that, because they visualize your progress, they show you how far you got already, and that motivates you to get even further. And you see the goal is approaching slowly. So it means that it's you're seeing that your work is actually doing something. It has an effect. Number 3 in our list is analyze and act. And now, again, this is really important in remote learning because again, when you're in school with your students, it's easy to see where everyone is going. It might be. I mean, at least it's easier to see. And for students, it's easy to ask for assistance if they don't know something. It's easy to ask questions if they're lost somewhere, and it's easy for you to see if someone is struggling with some topic or anything like that. But when the students are doing their work remotely, you have a really little FaceTime with any of the students, and that's, even if you do, that's over some kind of internet connection, some kind of web tool. And that's why it's important to follow the progress as closely as possible. And for that, it's really, whatever tools you're using, I strongly recommend that you pick the kind of tool that has good enough learning analytics tool, something that provides you information on each student's progress. Something like, this student has done this many exercises like this, and even more importantly, this student is struggling with this topic, and this student is maybe struggling with this topic, and this student is maybe doing really well on this topic, maybe so well that he or she needs more talents, again, to keep the things motivated. And the analytics is only useful if you actually follow the analytics. So it's important that you pay attention on what's happening over there, and you do it regularly. I mean, once a week is definitely not enough. Something you need to do constantly all the time to see how the students are doing. And then it's of course important that when you find out that the student is having some sort of difficulties over there, that you offer assistance and help as soon as possible. Because one of the things to realize is that students, especially the science students, the ones it's a lot easier to ask for assistance in classroom when the teacher is right over there. You walk past them. It's easy to say that I'm struggling in this exercise. I need some help with this exercise. It might be a lot more difficult if you need to do it by calling by phone or using whatever means you're using. So the communication is also something you need to do as easy as possible, but it helps a lot if the teacher can actually follow the progress on their own and then offer assistance when needed. Then number 4, now remote teaching, as you have realized before, is really easy to sort of like normal classroom work. And there's nothing wrong in that, but when things are too difficult, that might sometimes have a negative effect on learning and negative effects on sort of work ethics and things like that. And things you can make to keep a situation a bit more under control is to keep up routines. And I think a good idea is to keep as many as the routines you have normally. So if you start each day in your classroom at, let's say, 8 o'clock by doing something, I don't know, whatever it might be, by seeing what the students, what kind of tasks they completed the previous day, or I don't know, if you sing a song or whatever you do that also when you're teaching remotely, if it's possible. Something that keeps something that's familiar for students, so that they sort of have like a mental image that this is still schoolwork and this is still sort of similar to the schoolwork we do at classroom, even if we're doing this remote, even if you're not in the same location than my classmates or my teacher is. Well, since not all routines can be kept the same, it's also, I think, important to come up with new routines. So again, if you think about the 4 steps, or sort of basic steps in remote teaching. For example, if you give an introduction to the new topic at the same time each morning, and in a similar session or something like that, that's important. That's something that's also adds safety to students, or gives students the sense of safety, that things stay the same. It's creating a safe environment for students. Also, it's really important to stay on schedules and keep the students on schedules, and because again, it's really easy to do something else when you're working remotely. When the students are working remotely, it's really easy to sort of, instead of working on your school topics to do something else, play a game or go outside to play or whatever that might be. So it's important that you set goals and you set straight goals and you set schedules like this is the work you need to complete by tomorrow and so on. Now, there are a lot of great tools for remote teaching, and this list is by no means comprehensive. So there are definitely other tools in addition to these listed over here. There are some important things I think you need to consider when you're selecting tools. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But if you think about the tools needed for remote teaching, remote learning, there are at least these three categories. We need some tools for video conferencing, so something you can use, for example, each morning when you set the goals for the day and when you chat with your students and you get sort of all the students in the sort of the same virtual place where hopefully they can also talk to each other and they can tell what they did in the day before and things like that. And most of these tools can also be used to, or I think all of those tools and most of the video conferencing tools can be used to talk with just one person at a time. So you can also have like conferences with just a single student, which might be useful as well. Then you need some general tools for sharing materials. Google Apps works greatly for that. Google Apps for Education or Microsoft Offices or whatever you're familiar. If there's something you have been using before, then that's probably your best bet for sharing materials and for video conferencing. If there are tools your school offers, those are probably the ones you should use. For the other tools, these are probably the ones you have less experience about. And now I'm talking basically, for example, about tools that enable practicing the topics on your own. And I'm going to show you an example of one of these tools, the tools we've been working on later on the second half of this presentation today. But again, I think it's important if there are tools you have been using successfully in classroom, and if those tools can be adapted to use remotely, then that should be at least your starting point. Start with something you know how to use, because there's going to be a lot of cognitive load on students, a lot of new things they need to learn. There's going to be a lot of cognitive load on you, a lot of new things the teachers need to learn. And if you can decrease that even a bit, if you can make things a little bit easier for some point, then I think that's definitely something you should do. We've collected some things you should consider when you're selecting a tool, some things that are essential to select the proper education tool. And if you go through the list, the first one is that you need a tool that contains enough good quality content which supports your curriculum. I'm going to tell you straight away that if you try to create all the content yourself for your remote teaching, that's probably not going to work out. Constructing pedagogically valid content for remote teaching really takes a lot of time. And as we mentioned before, there's going to be a lot of new things you need to adapt anyway. There's a lot of your time is going to go to instructing students and designing new kind of lessons and things like that. So you probably won't be able to create at least all the content yourself. So I think it's a good idea to try to find a tool that contains enough good quality content and of course a content that supports your curriculum, because that's the kind of content you're going to need when you're teaching remotely. On the second bullet point is selecting a tool which is built on solid pedagogical principles. And what I want to say with this one is that if you browse internet, for example, you will find a lot of these sort of learning games. The games in quotes, because a lot of, or they are games, but learning in quotes, let's do it that way. So a lot of those games have really no pedagogical value. A lot of those games don't teach practically anything. They can be entertaining and the students are probably willing to play them. But if they are not actually designed to support real pedagogical principles and to actually teach something, then playing them has no added value at all. And connected on that, if you have a tool that is built on solid pedagogical principles, then it's also going to be a tool that provides valid evidence-based learning results. So something that sort of proves that this one actually works. If your students are using this tool, then they are actually learning something. And to validate whether they are learning something or not, you need the learning analytics we discussed before, and as much learning analytics as possible, but easy to understand learning analytics are crucial as well. Something that displays to teacher how well the students are doing and whether they are having problems with any of the topics, and something which also displays the students themselves how well they are doing and what they are concentrating on and how they are progressing and all those kind of things. Then it's also important to select a tool which is easy enough to adapt and use immediately. Again, I mentioned the concepts of cognitive load, which if you're not familiar with the concept, what it means is that whenever you need to learn something new, we call that the cognitive load. And if you're learning mathematics, for example, and if you need to learn to use a tool before you can start learning mathematics, that's like additional cognitive load. So instead of learning mathematics, you're learning to use the tool. And that's not the point. If you're having a mathematics lesson, you're supposed to learn the mathematics. And that's why it's important to select a tool which is easy to use. Luckily, students are usually sort of fluent in adapting new technologies, and at least they should be sort of like brave enough to try new things and so on. But still, there are systems there which can be way too difficult for some students to use. It may also mean that you will be spending a lot of time in answering the same questions over and over again, which again means that that's time you could be, as a teacher, doing something entirely different. The final point in selecting a tool is it's a really good thing if a tool provides a good communication channel between school and home. In the last slide, when we talk about tools, I mentioned that there are plenty of these sort of communication tools. But if there's some built-in communication tool in your learning system, it's always sort of easier to discuss, for example, about the exercises or whatever material there is in the tool. And again, the communication between school and home is really important when the students are working remotely, because you're not going to have those daily chats with them during the lectures or during the recess or anything like that. So there needs to be a clear and easy to use way to talk to your students and to your students talk to you and tell them if they are having problems and whatever they might require. Okay, something we've been working on in Edison is a concept called Finland math. And the idea is that we isolated 6 of the most important things in Finland math education. And we've been actually writing a couple of guides. There's actually a new one coming in a month or two about how to utilize these Finland math principles in your classroom. And a lot of these principles, or actually all of these principles, are designed so that you can utilize them in a classroom or when you're teaching remotely. And if you're interested in taking a more detailed look on this, you can download these guides free of charge from our website, educen.com. But the things we sort of realized why the Finnish math education is so successful. It's sort of concentrated on these 6 things: the stress-free learning, trying to keep the environment as stress-free as possible, deep understanding and creative problem solving. So instead of having such superficial calculations, we try to provide more deeper knowledge. Student-centered learning, so it's all about the student should be in the center of the whole learning process. And the personalized learning, something we talked about before, for example, offering suitable skill level content for different students. If someone is really good in something, then provide more difficult tasks for that student. And if a student is not as good, then maybe provide easier tasks. Also, more time for teachers and focused support for students are important things. And again, that's one of the key points in Finland Math, to free teachers' time so that you can do something actually beneficial instead of, for example, assessing the exercises yourself. And then the growth mindset, which is, if you try to facilitate the growth mindset, the idea that the students believe in themselves and think that they can get to be better people, better persons, more motivated persons, then you can definitely get better learning results. Okay, before we start the second half of the presentation, where I talk about the practical application of some of the things I've been presenting in the first half. Again, if you joined this presentation, and a lot of you joined this presentation just a while ago, just pick the first address in there and join the WhatsApp group for questions and support. And if you want to try the system yourselves in the second half, when I show you the demonstration, you can also sign up for a free account to try the system. Okay, and then so what I want to do next is to show you how you can utilize a system designed for remote learning, which is built on a lot of those principles I presented in the first half. And what I want to say in this point is that this is by no means the only system capable of some of these things. And as I said before, if you're using a different system, then that's perfectly fine. I hope you still managed to get something out of the presentation in the first half. The same principles concern whatever platform you're using. But I want to show you a demonstration on Editen Playground, because it's really easy to use and you can try it free of charge yourself, and you can see how the principles of remote learning actually work with your own classroom. The idea is that it's a gamified exercise-based platform. I will show it to you in a minute. And there's a full mathematics curriculum for ages 6 to 15, or grades from 1 to 9. It's built on the Finnish mathematics curriculum, but you can customize it yourself to suit basically any curriculum in mathematics anywhere around the world. It's a web service, so you can access it in the internet. You can use your desktop computer or tablet device, whatever your students are familiar using. Again, less cognitive load if you keep on using the same devices you've been using before. Also, I think it's sort of obvious that if you look at the infrastructure or the devices the students have at home, it's going to be a really diverse selection. They have a lot of different devices. That's why it's important, again, that you pick a platform that works with as many different devices as possible, unless you're providing the devices yourself. So some things I mentioned before about selecting a tool with evidence-based learning results. And if we talk a little bit about the history of Editen Playground, it's something we have been building in university for more than a decade, and later in Editen as well. And all the design and implementation of the system has been research-based. So whenever we have come up with new features or new kind of exercises or new content, we've been testing it in actual setups and research setups where we have a control group that used mathematics, did the mathematics like traditionally, and then the other group, the treatment group, that used Editen Playground, and then we had done some scientific testing to find out if the features work. If the features work, then we keep them in the system. If they don't, then we try on something else. And we've been doing a lot of these studies around the world. Here are some results. This is from Lithuania, which we did in spring 2018. The study lasted for 15 weeks, and the idea was that we had two groups. The first one used pen and paper, like traditional way to calculate math. They had like exercise books, and then they used pen and paper to do the calculations like you normally learn math. And then the other group used Editen Playground and the digital exercises over there. And if you look at the numbers over there, I think they sort of speak for themselves. There was the group using the digital system had a 39% improvement against the control group in mathematics performance, and 45% improvement to mathematics fluency. So if you compare it to control group, you see that there's a huge difference. And so this is actually evidence that the system works. And as I said before, this is something you should, whatever tool you're using, this is something you should look for. Some kind of valid evidence that shows you that the tool you're using actually provides learning results. That's important. As I said before, we've been doing a lot of these studies, and all of these studies show similar kind of results. So, for example, this one done in United Arab Emirates with four schools and more than 700 or almost 800 students for 6 weeks. Again, we found out that the students using the digital system improved their performance a lot, more than 20%, and the number of mistakes they made decreased by 16.4%, these are actually great numbers because this was used for 6 weeks, and 6 weeks is a really short time. And if you can find a tool which provides you this kind of changes sort of quickly, then I think it's a good idea to at least try it. One important thing in whatever pedagogical tool, especially math tool, you're going to select is, and one of the things I mentioned that you should look for in any tool is the amount of content, and you should have enough content. And the Khan Academy, which it has a lot of really valid materials and things like that. But if you look at the number of tasks they have available for math, it's like 24 weekly tasks available. And 24 tasks a week is probably not enough when you're trying to learn a new concept in mathematics. And if you look for, in comparison, the Edu10 numbers, in average, the students complete something like 260, more than 250 tasks each week. This is also one of the reasons why the students using the Edu10 Playground or using digital systems usually outperform the control groups that are using pen and paper, because you can calculate so much more. And you can calculate so much more, but you also get like meaningful feedback. Freeing teachers' time was one of the key points in Finland math pedagogy. And again, using digital tools may provide you this. For example, if you're using Edu10 Playground, it means that you're not doing as much paperwork and not as much testing, because the system does a lot of that for you. So whenever the students are working on the systems, I actually show you a demonstration of that in a minute, but when students are working on exercises, the system automatically gives them feedback, and that essential feedback, and then all the exercises can be tried immediately again if they do them wrong. You just get a little bit different numbers for the exercises, and this means that because they are all automatically assessed, you save as a teacher a lot of time for assessing, and that time can be used, for example, to support your students. And also the learning analytics, as we mentioned before, we talked about before, are essential so that you understand your students better, you know where they are struggling, you know where they have difficulties, and so on. And as we've seen, if you're using a system that gives you way more feedback, that gives you way more exercise, then it's definitely going to show up as improvement in grades. So if you take a look at the Edu10 Playground, how does it actually work? The idea in general is that if you use it at least when you use it in a classroom, and even if you use it remotely maybe, is that you replace at least one of your math lessons a week with Edu10 Playground. So you keep on working with your exercise books as you did before, but instead of doing the exercise books only, one of the weekly lessons is replaced with the digital version where you use Edu10 Playground. Now, you're going to need an account as a teacher, and if you haven't already created it, you can create it today. If you don't know how, you can ask in the WhatsApp group. I can show you the address once more before we get the system. And then all the students need their own accounts as well. But when you have a teacher account in Edison Playground, you can create the student accounts yourself quite easily. And I'm going to show you how in a minute. Then you create an own course for each of the grades. So if you're teaching several grades, then each of those grades has their own course. And each course contains lessons. There are around 40 lessons in each of those weeks. Each of those courses, sorry, would be actually a bit more. And then you're going to use 1 to 3 lessons for each week. And each of those lessons contains 25 to 30 exercises, and a single exercise contains multiple calculations, normally could be up to 10 or something like that. And then when the students are working on the system, they achieve virtual trophies, which we talked about the gamification before. It's essential that the students get some kind of reward when they're working hard. So typically when they do some amount, like half of the exercises, they get a bronze trophy. And when they work a bit more, they get a silver trophy, then a gold trophy. And then the diamond one is the one they get when they have completed almost all of the exercises. And trophies are also something you use as a teacher to set the goals for students. Something like in this lesson, you need to complete at least a bronze trophy, or you need to do enough exercises to complete at least a bronze trophy, and then the lesson is completed. And most of the times the students, on our experience, are not going to stop when they have completed the bronze trophy. They want to do it more. They want to get the silver trophy, they want to get the gold trophy, they want to get the diamond one. And this is strangely true for students in elementary school and for students in university as well. When you're using Edison Playground during school closure, and now this is an example, something you could do. You can have your own plan, and if you have your own routines, it's a good idea to try to embed the Edison Playground into your own routines as closely as possible. But this is like an example. So on Monday, you open a new lesson. The students start to work on the lesson, and before they start, you use a video conference tool to provide instructions. You maybe teach them a new topic if the topic is something they haven't been working before. You tell them the things they need to know. You maybe show them some exercises, so how to solve them. And then, of course, and even actually before that, you can check the previous lesson's progress, or then it can be part of the Monday routine that you see how well everyone is doing and see if some of the students have done really well on the previous week, and maybe announce that somehow, reward them in front of other students, something like provide positive feedback, which is really essential. Then starting from that one, on Tuesday, the students work on the new lesson, and at the same time, they may have some traditional math exercises with exercise book and pen and paper. And then on the Wednesday, you can open a new lesson if you decide you want to use 2 lessons each week, which might be a good idea in remote work. So again, the same routine we had on Monday. The students start to work on the new lesson. You had a video conference where you provide sort of like a lecture kind of video conference where you provide the examples, and of course you can interact with the students, and the students can help you or sort of solve some of the exercises during the video conference and so on. And then Thursday, again, the students work on the new lesson and work with traditional exercises. And then Friday, they work on the previous lessons if you want to. And during this whole time, you can follow students' learning progress all the time by using the learning analytics provided, and then provide assistance immediately when you realize or when you find out that some of the students are struggling with the concept. If you talk about average times, then on our experience, something like 30 minutes a day active learning in Edison Playground is probably something you should aim for. And as is mentioned on this example, it's a good idea to provide sort of a mixture between digital exercises and traditional exercises. You don't want to provide too much screen time for students, especially when they're working remotely, when there's going to be a lot of screen time anyway, a lot of time in front of computer. So I think it's a good idea to provide some traditional lessons and some digital lessons and create a perfect mixture that way. And why does it work? What are the reasons why we've been getting so good results over there? One of the things is definitely that you know a lot more about your students' work than you do with traditional exercise books. And the reason for that is that it can provide you all kind of statistics that are sort of difficult to provide when you're using traditional materials. You can, for example, you can easily see how long the students have been working in some of the materials. And actually, in Finland, a lot of teachers during this remote working weeks have mentioned that these sort of low-level learning analytics, something like a statistics where you can see that how long the students who are actually working with material are really useful. Because again, it's really difficult to observe because you're not on the same location, you're not on the classroom with your students, you don't know whether they are working with the material or whether they are doing something entirely else. And when you're using a digital system like Evidencebased Playground, you get a statistic saying that this student spent this much time on this lesson during these days, which gives you an access and enables you to sort of provide feedback. And I don't know, if it seems that the students are not working, maybe provide something else, but like assistance or to find out, or, well, you know. Active learning is definitely one of the important things in all digital systems, and also in Evidencebased Playground. This is something, that's probably one of the sort of like oldest theories in educational sciences, is that when you do things yourself, you learn them better than by just reading about things or hearing about things. And that's something you do in school all the time. You teach the student something, and then they can practice and try it on their own. And the digital systems allow students to perform a lot of active learning, but the active learning to be meaningful, you need to be able to get a lot of feedback. So if you don't know whether you're doing the things correctly or incorrectly, that's definitely going to decrease your motivation. But if you get the feedback all the time that, yeah, this one was correct, this one wasn't correct, but you can fix it by maybe doing this, then that keeps the students on working on the things. And then there's the gamification, which is also meant for increasing motivation. There's a huge amount of different kinds of exercises. There's more than 150 different exercise types, exercise and game types, which means that you're not working, even if you're working on the same topic, if you're working on multiplications, for example, you get a different kind of exercises with those sort of similar multiplication calculations, which keeps you definitely more motivated. If you look at the numbers, if you're using a digital system, the students are doing up to 8 times more calculations compared to pen and paper. And those are calculations where they receive instant feedback. So whenever they perform a calculation, they get a feedback stating that this one was correct, this one was incorrect. And in a lot of cases, how to fix the incorrect calculations or incorrect routines as well. So if you haven't done this already, and if you're interested in trying it out, while I show you the demonstration, you can now get the teacher access by signing up in that address over there, and then you can log in by using the username and password provided to you at playground.edugen.com. And I give you a minute to do this if you haven't, and then we're going to continue with the demonstration. Hope you have the address written down. Okay, then I'm going to move on to Edutsen Playground, and we're going to start our session and or our demonstration. Sorry, the session has been going on for almost an hour. I sort of recommend that you look what I'm doing instead of doing it yourself, and then you can try this out immediately after this session. There are a lot of support materials and instructions which you can access directly from the Edutsen Playground. I will show it to you a bit later today how to. So if you don't learn anything immediately after I show it to you here, you can definitely get help. And also remember the WhatsApp group and things like that. Anyway, if you look at the student view first, and this is like the basic view the students get when they access Edutsen Playground. And now this is sort of a blank view. I haven't completed anything as a student, but what I got here are the open lessons. There's only one lesson open for me right now. It's from the first grade, and it's number 10 and 10 pairs. So that's the topic we're trying to learn today. It shows me my trophies. I haven't collected any trophies yet, but if I have, the numbers are shown here. So it's sort of, again, the whole idea of gamification, showing you how well you have progressed, and you can also see how close you are to the next trophy when you start doing the exercises. And it also shows your weekly activity. It shows how well you did in previous weeks, which is, again, sort of important for students to see how much they have been working, especially if they're doing well and they can see that they're done more work in last week than they have in weeks before. That if they see that that one actually leads to better results, then it's definitely useful. Let's look at some of the exercises. If I open the first lesson, and now I can see the trophies in here. Whenever I do the exercise, I get some points, and the bar over here grows one exercise at a time. So how many points I get at a time, and then I get closer to bronze trophy, and then silver trophy, and so on and so on. So whenever you do the exercise, you can see that the bar grows a bit longer, and you're a bit closer to your next trophy. And if we start with the very first, very simple exercise, it's a puzzle exercise. It's something sort of get you started with the first lecture. So we try to, hopefully this isn't too difficult for me, try to come up with number 10. And when we complete it, we submit it, and yeah, we get the full points. And we see that the bar started growing. We are a little bit closer to the first trophy. Then I can go to next exercise if I want to, or I can go back to the list where I can select the next exercise. And the whole point is that the students don't need to work on the exercises on the same exact order. They can start wherever they want. And again, you as a teacher set the goals. You can say something like, well, the bronze trophy is typically a good goal, but the students can do whatever exercises you have given them to complete that goal. So it might mean that you need to complete all the exercises visible here, or you need to complete half, however you want it. If we look at some of these other exercises, some of them are sort of game-like exercises. So, for example, in this one, again, you need to remember this is the first grade exercise. So we just select a number. So we are learning numbers. We are trying to learn to distinguish the numbers from letters, and learn to distinguish the numbers from other numbers, learn what the numbers look like. So here's number 7. I need to select 7 here, and then I can move on to next round and so on. If I don't want to play this to the end, I can just submit it. I get some points. I didn't get all of them because I didn't complete all of the tasks, but I get some points, and again, my grade grows a bit larger. I'm a bit closer to the actual trophy. Then we have some exercises with some voice or sounds in them, some speeds over them. And now this is an important thing. In a lot of the exercises in Edutsen Playground, the students can choose their challenge level themselves. So you can pick an easy, a medium, or hard version of the same exercise. As a teacher, in the learning analytics, you can see what the student selected. You can actually see that for each student. You can see that this student over here selected easy exercise for this exercise number 4 or hard exercise for another exercise. But again, the idea is to let the students also differentiate themselves. And this also might give you some kind of idea on how well they are performing. If a student keeps on selecting hard exercises, then they probably know the topic rather well. If they only select the easy ones, then it's possible that they're having maybe some problems over there, or then it's possible that they just want to select the easy ones, and in that case you can probably provide some assistance. I'm going to be brave here and select the difficult ones. Let's see how this goes. I hope you can hear the sound. So I click on the sound button over there, and it says 3 + 5. I hope I don't know if you can actually get the sound over there over the stream, but clicking the button tells it 3 + 5. I can type in the answer over here by using the keyboard over here, or by using the keyboard on my computer. And again, if you're working on a tablet, for example, or in an iPad or something like that, then this on-screen keyboard makes things a lot easier, because I just type in 8 from here, and then I can check my answer, and in this case that was correct. So 3 + 5 is 8, right? And then we get a bunch, and all of these exercises contain a number of calculations. And then in this case there are 10 of them, again displayed in this sort of another progress bar in here. I'm the second one now. So the second one is 3 + 6, and again these are random calculations, meaning that after the student has completed the exercise, he or she can retake the exercise immediately, and then he or she gets a bit different calculations. So if you don't know something, it's easy to try it again, because you don't get the same exact exercises, you get the same exact calculations, you get a bit different numbers, so it's meaningful to do it again. Now I forgot what was the question. So it's 3 + 6. Let's see, I'm going to answer incorrectly for this one. I'm going to say that's 8, and now it tells me that I didn't get this one correctly, but I can see what the correct answer would have been. So it would have been 9 instead of my answer, which was 8. Which is, again, it's important feedback, and in the more complicated tasks you can actually get a lot more feedback about how to solve the task or calculation or something like that. But even in the simple ones, it's a good thing that you can get the correct answer, and then you can try this again whenever you want to. I can reset the exercise and try it again from the beginning, and now I get different calculations. Now this time the first one is 4 + 4, which is 8, and so on and so on. Okay, let's see one more. I get back to lesson. I'm not going to save my progress on this one. And as a final one, let's see this razor exercise. Again, as I said, the idea is that we're working on 10 pairs, and we're working on small numbers, but we have sort of similar calculations but different tasks, which keeps the things more motivational. So here's the instructions on how to use this. Again, I can do this with my keyboard, or I can do this on if I'm using an iPad or something, there are on-screen buttons. I can click play it. And then the idea is that we need to form 10 pairs. So there's a 6 number displayed on there, and I need to pick the number so that I get the 10 as a sum. So 6 + 4 is 10. I'm going there, and 2 + 8, that's also 10. So it gives, the idea is to practice to find out what number with that number over there. If I select an incorrect lane, then the bar stops over there. If you look at the screen on the top right corner over here, I lost one of my hearts, one of my sort of lives, but since there are 4 more left, I can go and practice this again, and then 5 and 5 makes 10, and 9 and 1 makes 10. I can also drive faster, and again, if I make a mistake, and I can keep on going as long as I have those lives left, or until I've completed the whole task. Again, there are varying amount of exercises or calculations inside a single exercise, but I think in this one there are probably 10 or 15 per tasks you need to complete. So this is what it looks like for students. So it's really simple to get started with students. You log into the system, you select the lesson, and usually there's only one lesson to select, the one you set up visible as a teacher, and then you start working on the exercises. And you keep on working. If at any point student struggles, it's easy to send feedback directly from the system. Let's click on the speech bubble over there and click on, so it see you a bit later. Yeah. And so, but let's get back to the teacher view and so how this thing works for teachers. So that view was for students. And now if you look at the front page for teacher, this is actually really similar than the one we saw for the students. There are the same exact components over here. And if you log in for the first time, it's going to ask you to create a new course and it's going to ask you to copy the existing material. I can do it later if I want to by clicking on this, opening this menu over here and selecting new course. And then it gives me all the courses in the curriculum where I can select one and then copy the course and create a new course for me with all the material. So you need to do that before you start, and you're going to select a course with curriculum that fits your students. If you're working with 4th grade, select the 4th grade curriculum and so on. And actually at this point, I think it's a good idea to say that if you're from Mexico, Ecuador, Chile, Argentina, or Peru, then there are our local partners in the WhatsApp chat. You can ask for their contact information. So if you want to get started in those countries, you can actually get like a hands-on guidance on how to use the system yourself. So it's definitely a good idea. If your country wasn't mentioned over there, then just you can send your questions to WhatsApp anyway. We'll provide you with assistance when needed. Okay, but back to basics. So the idea is that here are all the grades that are available in this course. Now in this demo course, there are only 9 grades, but in actual courses, you get something more than 40 lessons. And then I can select which lessons are visible to students by clicking on the eye icon over here. So if I want to show the geometry, lines, triangles, and so on round, I select the eye icon or lesson icon over there. Or if I want to show the lesson with divisibility and factors, I click the eye icon over there. And all the lessons with blue eye over there are shown to students. We can actually take a look. So if I log in as a student, there are now these 2 lessons visible for me. So the basic idea is that before the digital lesson starts, you select which lesson is the one the students are going to work on, and then you set that as a visible lesson. And usually there can be more than one lesson. There can be like last week's lesson if you want your students to keep on working on that one and so on. And that's basically what you need to do each week. Just click on one of those icons, just select what topic you want to show to your students. Some of the things you need to know, and before you get started, you need to add your students to the system. And you do it by, there's this toolbar on the top right corner, where are these icons, where you can select different views on the teacher side. If you select the 3rd one from the left, the users, you get this view, which displays all the users, all your students, and all your assistant teachers in your course. And then you click the Add Students over there. You get a list, and all you need to do is type in the names of the students in here. Just going to write some names over here, and then I click Next. And what happens is that you get the user accounts created. I can click Next, and then I can select the type of password I want. If I'm happy with the easy passwords, which for smaller students are definitely fine, I can select Create Accounts. And for me, it asks me to select a school. That's because I have plenty of schools, because I'm working on in different countries with this one. But for you don't get that kind of dialog. Then you get all the accounts in here. And this is a list which you can then print out and share with your students. I mean, one account for each student. So now Henko can use this username and password, or Erki can use this username and password, and so on to actually access the system. So that's all it takes to create the account. And once you have created an account for a student, that same account works for any courses they take in Edutainment Playground. So they don't need to have a new account when they start a new course or new grade or anything like that. The same one works. And the students can, of course, change their passwords and however they want to. Okay, so you create your students the accounts, you open the lessons you want to in the dashboard, in the front page, where you can get by clicking the little house icon over there or the Edutainment logo in the top left corner. And after that one, your students start working on, and what's left for you is to see how well they are doing. And I'm going to show you some demo data, because I can't show you any data from actual students. So this is what your front page, teacher front page, might look like when you have been using the Edutainment for some time, for a little while at least. So my students in this course have collected this many trophies, 105 diamond trophies. So I think it's perfectly fine. There are none this week, and I can select the Guardian report for all the parents if I want to here, or generate diplomas. But what I'm interested now is the student diligence graph, which I found out as an excellent tool to find how the students are actually working. So what it means is that there's the score the students have collected, and there's the time they have been using in the system. So it means that this student over here has collected 5,700 points in 27 hours and 27 minutes. And if the students are sort of close between this line over here, they use more time, more points. That's what you want. If a student is over here, it means that they have collected a lot of points in sort of a short time, which means that the exercises have probably been a bit too easy. And if the students are somewhere over here, it means that they have been using a lot of time but haven't collected that many points, and that means that the exercises are probably a bit too difficult. So this is like a quick overview on how your students are doing. You don't get to details. You get to details if you want to later, but if you don't, then this is actually a really useful tool. It's a quick glance on how your students in your class are doing at the moment. And then you can check on the last activity, when the student was last logged in the system, what's happening this week, how many achievements the students have collected, and so on. But if you want to take a closer look at analytics, you can click on the analytics tab over there. And then we get more detailed access to what's happening in the whole classroom or with individual students. So we see that for this lesson, which I've selected over here, I can select over here, multiplication. The students have been using, on average, 5 minutes and 35 seconds. There have been 2 active students, 76% accuracy on the submitted tasks, and on average, a single student has completed 97 tasks. And then there's a list for all students, where I can see each student's accuracy and score, and what level they have been playing, or what score trophies they have achieved, and how many, in what level they have been playing. So this student has selected 5 easy tasks and the moderate or hard tasks, and so on. And if I want, I can get into a lot of details. I can select a single student from here if I want to, and then I can take a look on that student's progress in a really detailed level. I can check down to individual exercises, individual calculations, and how much time was spent in all the tasks and so on. So that's basically it, and that's all you need at this point. So what you need to do, if we sort of recap, you create your accounts on this user tab, you open a lesson in the dashboard, and then your students start working on, and then you just follow their progress in the learning analytics section. So that's all it takes. That's not too difficult. And that was one of the things I talked about earlier. So whichever tool you sort of choose it, whether it's Editor and Playground or something different, choose something that's easy to adapt, something that doesn't require like hours of work to get something going on. Because there are a lot of new things you need to learn. You need to learn, and your students need to learn when you're working on remotely for the first time. Okay, so that's it about the demonstration, and a couple of more things I want to mention before we are done for today. So once again, if you didn't get the address for teacher access, you can just write it down now. So you can get your teacher account, your username and password over there, so you can access the Editor and Playground, the system I just showed you before. You can start your free trial. Yes, and then you can go to playground.eduten.com to log in at the system. And things you want to do when you're actually getting started with the students, as I said before, routine and structure are important. So if you're using Editor and Playground or any other digital tool, set a fixed time every week. So it's again, it's a routine. It's something like we work on this Editor and Playground exercises on Monday and Wednesday, or on each Friday or something like that. But something that students know that on this day I'm going to be working on this system. Or you could do some work each day. Then again, it might be a good idea to be something like, this is the system we're going to work on at noon each day, or something like that. And set the goals, something we started this presentation with. Before you open a new lesson, make sure that all of your students understand that which trophy they need to collect this week. Is it the bronze trophy, or is it something more? And recognition and positive feedback, again, something I mentioned before, are really important. So it's, if the student is doing well, mention that, and maybe do that in front of the class. Students who are getting better trophies than bronze, and maybe students who are usually not doing that well but have done really sort of exceptionally well in some of weeks, recognize them in front of class, provide positive feedback, mention that that was a really good work, that was done definitely something extraordinary. And also, I think it's a good idea that if you're using a digital system, then the trophies have some kind of impact on assessment. However you want to decide, but something like, if you collect enough gold trophies, you get this much better grade or something like that. And finally, I think it's essential that when the students are collecting the trophies, you communicate that to parents. You tell that your student did really well here, student have collected this many trophies, or that your student didn't do that well during this time, we expected a bit more. So things you would communicate to parents as well. And actually something I want to show you. Again, in Editor and Playground, there's this little bubble over here which you can click, and if you select report an issue, then the student can send a message which you will receive and we will receive in Editor and Playground. And this is again the communication thing I mentioned before. So if a student is having a problem in one of the exercises, he or she can immediately write you a message. And as a teacher, when you click the same bubble, you can see the messages sent by your students in here. So you can see that there's a student, whatever his or her name is, who is having problems with this exercise, or these kinds of exercises, and then you can help him or her to perform better. So it's easy communication. You don't need to use your phone. You don't need to do anything excessive. Just click a single icon, type in your message, and that's it. Okay. And if you think about the first lesson, what you need to do as a summary, you create the accounts and then you send the accounts to students. And this you need to do only once for each class. So each student gets a single account, like the username and password, and then you start with whatever topic you choose. And I think it's a good idea to start with the topic the students already know. So instead of trying to teach a new topic in the beginning, let them learn to how to use the system by providing something they have already practiced with. They will get some more practice on the topic. That definitely doesn't harm them, but it's also an easy way. Again, we talked about the cognitive load, a little less cognitive load because they know the topic and then they can focus on learning the ropes of the new system. So for the first lesson, the actual objective is learn to use Eduten Playground, and after that one you can use the same system to learn the new topics. Again, with any digital tool, I think this is a good idea. Start with a familiar topic and you spend the first lesson to learn to use the tool. And then remember to set the goal straight and remember to explain how the system works. There's a new lesson for each week, and you need to get a trophy from that lesson and use your video conference system to show what the trophies mean and where the students can see them and where they can see how close they are to the trophy. And make sure that everyone understands what trophy they are aiming for each week. And then for each week, you open just one new lesson, or you might want to open 2 lessons, because if you're only working remotely, you might want to use some more content, but don't open all the lessons. That's confusing, and that's not a clear goal to set. That's like too much to choose from. It's a good idea to open, at least in the beginning, 1 or 2 lessons a week, and then provide clear goals to achieve. And again, as I said before, make sure every student knows that they have to achieve a trophy by next week's lessons. And after a couple of weeks, this becomes a routine. So you can pay less attention to this when the students realize that it's the same sort of routine each week, that there's a new lesson and you need to achieve the bronze trophy or the silver trophy or whatever trophy you decide. And as a teacher, observe how the students are doing. Check that they have completed their homework, and now most of the work they be doing is homework because they're mostly working from home or almost solely working from home. So check that how they are doing, check if they have any problems in any of the topics. Get accustomed and familiarize yourself with the Learning Analytics view. There are a lot of information you can get from individual students. So check that at least every few days. I think it might be a good idea to spend like 5 minutes or a couple of minutes might be enough each day to log in the system and just get an overview of the statistics. And finally, so we're getting close to our session over here. As I mentioned, I'm the head of research in Eduten, and what we are is a spin-off of University of Turku, which is a globally ranked top 1 university in Finland. And we're working closely with University of Turku and with University of Helsinki, where I'm working in addition to Eduten at the moment. And what we are working on in addition to Eduten Playground is the Finland math, which is a pedagogical concept about how to teach math the Finnish way wherever you're teaching it. And if you talk about Eduten Playground in Finland, it's the most popular digital math tool. It's actually used in 45% of all schools, so almost half of the schools in Finland use Eduten Playground. And that's important because in Finland, the teachers can select the tools themselves. So all the teachers can select what tools they want to use. And so I think it's important to remember something we are really proud of is that the teachers in Finland voted Eduten Playground as their favorite tool, as the best tool for digital learning just last year. So if you're interested to learn more, I think a good idea is you will probably get these slides, but to go to eduten.com. And also, actually, one more thing I want to show you is that when you're logged into Eduten Playground, and if you want to learn more, you can also always click on the top right corner with your initial in it, and then click on the support section. And there are all the instruction materials. There are guides for how to do things in here. There are these slides, these training slides. There are guides to how to use it in general, how to create electronics, electronic exams here, and there are some videos you can take a look how to use Edugen and what it's all about, and so on. And also, if you're interested in Finland math, you can open the Finland math guides directly here from Edugen Playground. And whatever more you want to use, you can always go to eduden.com or send us an email on support@eduden.com, and we're more than happy to answer any questions you might have, whether it's about Edugen Playground or about Finland math or about digital pedagogy in general. So, I think we have one more slide to go, which is for me to say thank you to all for listening. I know that there were a lot of you. I didn't see the final numbers because I've been talking to you. But if there's anything you want to ask me about the presentation or want to discuss, or maybe you're interested in doing some research or anything like that, feel free to send me an email at erkki@edugen.com, or you can use the support@edugen.com, whatever, you can reach me anyhow. So I hope you got something out of this one. So whether you want to try out Edugen Playground or whether you're using some kind of other digital tool, I hope that you found this presentation somewhat useful. And so I thank you for listening, and hope that you have a really sort of fruitful remote lessons up ahead of you. Thank you very much.